With all the technological advancements made in drones these days, you would think that it's easy to get good drone footage, right? Wrong. I still see many consumers using the latest drones but produce terrible jerky shots. Even if you're already a decent drone pilot, I have some tips to take your shots from ordinary to something more dynamic like this. If you're new to this channel, do consider subscribing for more of such content. Hey guys, what's up? My name is Bernard and welcome to the channel. So for today's video, I'll be sharing some tips with you to take your drone footage to the next level. Personally, I'm using the Mavic Pro tool, but these tips are applicable to most drones. My tips will begin at a beginner level that's easy for anyone to achieve and slowly progress to some advanced flying techniques. My first piece of advice to you is to get smooth moving footage. Very frequently, I see people post footage with jerks and micro jitters. Such movements immediately reveals that you're a beginner pilot. The key to getting smooth footage is actually very simple. All you have to do is move either joystick in one direction. It doesn't matter if it's forwards, backwards, or sideways. Just pick any and commit to it. If you're still a beginner, I would recommend to only move one joystick and keep it in the same direction with the same intensity for 10 seconds at least. Understandably, when you're adjusting your drone into position, there will be some unsightly movements. The solution is simple. Either stop the video recording at those moments or bring it into post-production to remove it. My second tip is not advice on how to fly your drone, but how to enhance your footage by editing it. One thing I like to do is to add a vertigo effect. Doing so is simple. What you need is footage shot in 4K and to fly your drone forward using the advice I gave earlier. Next, bring it into your editing software and all you have to do is to keyframe the scale from 100 to something like 60. You will then end up with footage that looks like this. However, I would advise you to use this effect sparingly because excessive use of this would be weird. Another thing you could do in post is adding a tilt to your footage digitally, and there are two ways to do this. One way is to add black bars and keyframe the vertical axis to give it a digital tilt. Another way is to crop in to about 110% and, like earlier, keyframe the vertical axis. Either way, you make a simple shot more dynamic. From this point on, all my suggestions will require advanced piloting skills to execute. I would recommend that you put in the effort to practice these tips on casual flights instead of only attempting them on important shoots. Building on the point made earlier about adding a tilt, this time you could physically add a tilt while you're flying your drone. You can do so by using the wheel on the top left corner of the remote control to move the gimbal. Personally, I think that this movement is best combined with either a front flying or a backwards flying shot for a dramatic reveal. To make it easier for you, I would recommend going into the gimbal settings and adjusting the max gimbal pitch speed to something lower. The next tip I have for you is to combine two different flight movements. For a simpler one, it can be something like adjusting the pitch and the yaw. That means moving the right joystick forward and the left joystick sideways concurrently. This would result in a dolly in and panning type of shot, and it will be much more dynamic than a simple push in. My advice to you is to start with the right joystick forwards first and gradually pushing the left joystick towards the direction you want your drone to face. If you do it abruptly, you would get a rather unpleasant jerk. Another combination I use frequently is to adjust the throttle and the pitch. That means moving both the left and the right joystick forward. I usually fly the drone forwards first and gradually increase the elevation to do a review of the environment. This is fairly simple to execute, but the results can be absolutely stunning. My favorite combination is moving the roll and the yaw in opposite directions. This will allow you to do a rotating shot around your subject to create a parallax effect, and in my opinion, this is one of the harder movements to execute, but if you can do it, you will end up with epic looking footage. This is one of the riskier maneuvers because you're flying towards a direction you're not facing, so do take note of your environment before and during the execution of your shot. From here on, if you're able to combine up to 3 movements, or maybe even a 4th or a 5th, you will be able to get very nice shots. Just remember to move the joysticks gradually so there wouldn't be any jerky movements. Moving on to my 4th tip. This is a rather straightforward one, but it requires some skills to execute. That advice is to occasionally fly your drone lower to the ground. More often than not, people are flying their drones up high. There is nothing wrong with that. After all, drones are made for aerial shots. However, when you fly your drone lower to the ground, even at a regular speed, everything will look much more intense. That is because there is a lot of movement in your image, and it will look like you're moving faster and further than how it would look like high up in the air. The reason why I say it requires skills is because when you're flying lower to the ground, there tend to be more obstacles in the way and you have to be careful to avoid them. There have been a couple of situations where I had close calls because I couldn't gauge my bearings well from the screen. It takes experience to get better at that, and the only way is to practice. My fifth tip is something kinda related to the fourth. You should use more foreground in your shot. Adding foreground in your shot is a very common technique used by videographers when shooting on the ground. However, for some reason, when we fly a drone, we tend to take it out in the open. Therefore, it is important to remind yourself every once in a while to apply the same techniques of shooting with your camera to flying a drone. You are guaranteed to get much better shots this way. The reason why I classified this tip as an advanced one is because it requires you to use your piloting skills to navigate around your surroundings carefully and to use it to your advantage instead of crashing your drone into something. The sixth and final tip is something made popular by Sam Coder. Can you already guess what it is based on the mention of his name? It is to fly your drone through something. This is definitely a tough one, which is why I saved it for the last. To even be able to attempt something like this, it will require you to have balls of steel. But fret not, as I have suggestions for ordinary people like myself. When I say you have to fly your drone through stuff, you don't necessarily have to fly it through small and tight spaces. Even wider openings that have ample space for your drone to pass through can make your footage look really good. Take this video as an example. However, even if flying a drone through a wide opening sounds easy, it is still recommended that you accumulate flying experience before attempting something like this so you can better gauge distances. Also, you probably need to switch off obstacle avoidance to be able to execute this, if not your drone will likely stop mid-flight. So yes, those are my 6 tips for you to take your drone shots to the next level. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and found it useful. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you did. That's it for today. It's a wrap!